Hey crafters, it's Sherry from Wild Polka Dots DIY Studio, where it's all about getting creative, so let's make something amazing. Take a look at this. Doesn't it feel like it's been around for 100 years? Every splinter, every faded patch has a story to tell, but the best part? I didn't buy this look, I made it, starting with literal trash. If you love projects that turn something destined for the landfill into a piece of treasured decor, then you're in the right place. Today, we're building this reclaimed wood jack-o'-lantern sign, and I'm going to show you how to master the art of distressing and shading to achieve this authentic vintage charm. Let's dive into the dirt. This project started with a lucky break. A friend was tearing down her old picket fence, and of course, I jumped on the opportunity. Reclaimed wood adds instant character to any project, but it comes with a challenge, dirt, and age. Once I cleaned it all up, I measured out the perfect size for our sign. 22 inches felt right for showcasing the design, and then I used my skill saw to make a clean cut, which defined the edges of our canvas. This wood was full of splinters, fraying edges, and the goal here wasn't to make it smooth, but to make it safe. I sanded both sides lightly, just enough to get the splinters off, but stopping before I lost the wonderful, authentic, chipped away texture. I used my laser to cut the shapes for the pumpkin, moon, and little bat, but if you didn't have a laser, you could always use a scroll saw or a simple template printed on cardstock, a craft knife, or you could cut these shapes from thin craft wood or MDF. Once everything was ready to go, I began painting everything with a base coat. To give the pieces that aged look, I used some shadowing around the edges. I just started with a darker color, and I dipped half of my paintbrush into the darker yellow and half into the lighter, and then I wiped off the excess on my board. And then I moved on to the orange and did the same, going around the edges with a little bit darker of an orange color. I used some black to give it a little bit of whimsy and charm. And I just used my angle brush and went around the edges of those scored lines that I had created with my laser. I used my liner brush to add a few more details to the pumpkin. Once everything was painted, I came back in and added some black splatters, and then I laid the pieces out on my piece of reclaimed wood. And I had actually cut these from wall paneling, so I'm using Fabri-Tac, and the link to this will be in my description. And I'm using the Fabri-Tac to attach the pieces for the face to the pumpkin itself. Once I have everything glued up, then I begin placing the pieces onto the board itself. And I do this using E6000. And if you haven't used this amazing little tool that moves the E6000 up, and I actually think it's for toothpaste, like to move toothpaste up through the roll, this product is incredible. You simply just grab that little key ring and you stick it onto the bottom of your E6000 tube, and then that slides right into the roller part. I absolutely love this little thingamajig. I'll leave a link to it on Amazon in my description. Now for the fun part, adding the embellishments with a messy bow. I took a piece of drop cloth and pulled the strings to fray the edges. It gives it that tattered look, an aged look. And if the string doesn't pull completely out, don't worry, just snip it with the scissors. And then to truly achieve an authentic aged look, I used archival ink to distress the edges of all my fabrics. The drop cloth, the lace, even the bright white of the gingham ribbon, the consistency was the key here. I wanted to choose a stack of ribbons and fabric scraps that would coordinate with the pumpkin. So, as I said, I used the drop cloth, some old lace from a curtain, some black gingham, and then that zigzag that I just bought at the dollar store. I crisscrossed my stack of ribbons and added a few strands of jute twine, and then I tied it all together tightly in the middle with a separate piece of twine using a double knot. I fluffed it up and placed it on my board and had the perfect messy bow. I used some Fabri-Tac and some hot glue to hold it in place. And then to add the final touches, I tucked in a little bit of Spanish moss underneath the edges of the ribbon to make it look beautiful and add more security and dimension to the bow. And there it is, our reclaimed wood jack-o'-lantern sign. From a pile of dirty old fence pickets to this incredible piece of textured vintage autumn decor. Every chip, every shadow, and every frayed edge tells a beautiful, spooky story. I absolutely love how the soft shading contrasts with the rough, rustic wood. And if you enjoyed this transformation and plan to try the dry brush shading, let me know in the comments. Remember, everything is listed in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.